After losing her boat in an accident, Jen passed out and washed up on an island. When she woke up, she saw her friend Brad nearby and ran to see how he was doing, but found that he had a large piece of coral protruding from his stomach. She screamed for help, but no one answered, so after taking a flare gun out of her vest, she pulled Brad away from shore. She removed the coral and then covered the wound with a cloth, but Brad's only response was to ask, "Did you see it?" Jen thought he needed water, so she ran into the woods to find a coconut and smashed it with a rock. Unfortunately, when she returned, Brad was dead. Jen then explored the island, but walking on the beach would take her in a circle until she got back to where she started. She then explored the woods and found a lot of things that had been there for a while, judging by the condition they were in. Jen called for help again, but no one answered, so she searched her bag and found some pills. She then checked the refrigerator and found sealed bottles of soda. There were other objects under some of the leaves, such as a small metal box in which Jen found matches, a sailcloth, and a toy bag. Suddenly, Jen heard a strange noise and went to find the source. It was coming from a hollow tree, and when she looked inside, she was surprised to see a bird flying away. Jen then covered Brad's body with large leaves. Noticing that the sun was setting, she looked for a place to stay for the night just before it started to rain. She covered herself with a sailcloth and left a few items outside to collect water. The next morning, Jen found tons of dead fish on the shore and began to collect them in bags. She was also shocked to find a dead shark with nasty lacerations on its body. Jen cut off the head with ice and put the fish in the cooler for later use. Rummaging through another bag, she found a notebook and tried to read it, but the water had erased the words. Among those pages, there was a photo of a couple that made her feel even more lonely. The next time Jen explored the island, she found piles of rocks and a cross-shaped tree branch, which she recognized as graves. This prompted her to dig a hole in the sand and dump Brad's decomposing body in it, then cover it with leaves and sand, completing the grave with a piece of wood marked with Brad's initials. That night, Jen hung a sailcloth cut to fit the shark and lit a fire with matches to cook the fish. In the morning, Jen was horrified to find Brad's body missing and the grave covered in blood. Sensing something was wrong, used a rock on the branch as a spear. She also brought a log to lean on so she could sit and watch the jungle all evening. Jen eventually fell asleep and was awakened in the middle of the night by a strange noise. However, she couldn't see anything between the trees and assumed it was fire. The next day, Jen noticed floating objects nearby and went into the water to retrieve them. Before swimming back, she dove down to check if there was anything else and was shocked to see a mysterious hole at the bottom of the ocean. She didn't dare go near it and returned to shore with her new belongings. In the suitcase, she found a pile of clothes and changed into something warmer. That night, Jen went through the box and discovered the photos of the deceased owners. Suddenly, she heard a plane flying over and she immediately ran to shore to fire a flare, but unfortunately, the plane didn't see her. When the rocket fell into the sea, it revealed the silhouette of a huge, strange monster. Frightened, Jen grabbed her spear and fled into the woods. Soon, the monster arrived on the island and searched the bushes, but it did not see Jen and left without attacking. The next morning, Jen found the monster had destroyed her camp. When she retrieved old photos, she discovered the monster's eyes on the back. Desperate to escape, Jen packed Brad and his life jacket into a suitcase and took him into the water. She intended to use it as a raft, but the suitcase was not strong enough to support her weight, and Jen threw it down on the sand in frustration. Before the sun set, Jen hid in the hollow tree trunk to sleep. Then, in the middle of the night, she was awakened by the sound of the monster coming to the island. It grabbed its log and started rolling and pounding it, so Jen had to concentrate on not making any noise and protecting her head. After much shaking and growling, the monster got bored and finally left. Days passed and Jen survived by fishing during the day and by hiding in a hole at night. After some practice, she finally killed a small shark with her spear. She hung it from a tree before falling asleep in the hole, but she could still hear the monster carrying the shark away. Sometime later, another body washed ashore. When Jen went to see him, she discovered severe injuries to his face from the monster, as well as the loss of both legs. She hung it on a tree and hid in her cave, but this time she stayed awake to see the monster coming. It quickly brought the body down and began to eat it. Soon after, Jen heard a plane flying by and gasped, but she couldn't get out because the monster was near her cave. When he couldn't find it, he returned to the ocean, but unfortunately the plane had already taken off. The next day, Jen used sailcloth, belts, and ropes to make a hammock and hung it high in a tree. Now she could see the area better from above and out of the monster's range. That night, Jen was lying comfortably in her hammock when she noticed the monster walking through the bushes. Suddenly, he began pulling on the rope, causing the hammock to fall, causing Jen to scream and flail around on the sail until she fell. She immediately began to run away as the monster chased her, jumping into the water to move faster than swimming. He eventually landed in front of her and Jen stabbed him with her spear in fear, but the monster's monster threw him onto the sand. He then hit her again and she fell into the water. But before the beast could kill her, a sudden clap of thunder scared her. Jen decided to climb a tree and sleep in the rain, even though it was a very uncomfortable position. In the morning, Jen checked her leg and found a nasty wound. While she was showering and changing, she saw a life raft floating nearby and immediately jumped into the water to reach it. There were two people inside, her boyfriend Lucas and Mia, Brad's girlfriend. Jen helps them to shore and the pair hug each other tightly. Jen then shares her fish and fresh water while trying to tell her friends about the monster, insisting that they use the raft to get away. She even shows them the photo and tells them about Brad's death, but Lucas and Mia don't believe her. They assume she's seeing things and refuse to go back to the raft because the isolation is almost driving them crazy. Jen then announces that she's going to get more food and borrows Lucas' Swiss Army knife. When she opens the knife to clean the fish, she sees blood on the blade and becomes suspicious. She tries to convince her friends to leave again and an argument ensues, ending with Lucas yelling at her. Later, while Lucas and Mia are distracted, Jen gathers her belongings and puts them on the raft before pushing it out to sea to escape. However, her friends see her and run to stop her. Lucas grabs Jen and during the struggle, she kicks Mia in the face. Angry, Mia retaliates by hitting Jen unconscious with an oar. It is dark when she wakes up and she is horrified to find that her friends have tied her to a tree. They refuse to untie her when she asks, and Mia leaves to give the couple some privacy. Lucas begins to complain about Jen's attitude, saying that he had a great time on the boat with his friends, but she was unhappy and even threatened to break up with him. Jen thinks this is not the right time to discuss their relationship, but Lucas continues, yelling that Jen has no home, no money, and no life without him. He believes she has no right to abandon him on the island after all he has done for her. When Jen insists on leaving and talking later, Lucas points out that she looks too much like his friend Zach, but he doesn't say what happened to her. Meanwhile, Mia walks on the shore and notices pieces of fish in the water. Suddenly, Lucas and Jen hear Mia screaming, so Lucas grabs a torch and runs to help her. He finds the monster that is killing Mia and hits her with the torch, but the monster pushes him away. She then jumps into the ocean and takes Mia with her. When Jen finally cut the rope, it was too late. There was nothing but blood in the water. The next morning, Lucas finally agreed to go on the raft with Jen. Together they gathered a bunch of fish and cooked them all over a fire lit by the last match, so they could carry provisions for the trip. They then put all their belongings on the raft and finally took off. Inside the raft, Jen was surprised to see a lot of blood. As Lucas started rowing, he suddenly saw the creature swimming below them. Its claws extended and attacked Lucas, who immediately hid inside the raft and Jen closed it. However, the monster did not give up and began to claw at the bottom of the raft. After a few blows that shook the entire structure, the monster created a hole and poked its head through. Jen immediately kicked him and Lucas started firing the flare gun. His first shot missed, but the second missile landed in the beast's mouth. The duo then used the opportunity to push her into the water with their spears. For a second, they thought they were safe, but the creature broke through the base of the raft and dragged Jen into the water, intending to take her into its hole. As she struggled to break free of his grip, Jen remembered Lucas's dagger and used it to stab the beast, which let go of her and swam away. Just then, she saw Lucas jump into the water to save Jen and quickly swam towards him, grabbing him at the last second and pulling him into the hole. After screaming in grief, Jen swam back to shore and noticed that the fire they were supposed to put out still had a small spark. Jen ran and rekindled it until it actually started again. She then took out her notebook and wrote a letter explaining what would happen if she died and someone found her. Jen had a plan in mind that involved building a pile of spears, gathering wood and leaves, and digging a hole in the sand. This led her to find a skeleton, which she decided to use for her plan. As night fell, the monster emerged from the water and began wandering the woods, following the scent of fish. Once the monster was close enough, Jen lit a pyre to trap the monster in its midst. She then surprised the creature with her spear, stabbing it once before fleeing behind a tree. The monster sought it out, and Jen waited until its back was turned so she could stab it with her bone, but she was quickly taken down. She didn't give up and immediately stabbed the monster again, this time hard enough to send her flying. Seeing the beast bleeding and in pain, Jen decided to continue fighting. She stabbed it over and over again with any bone she could find, occasionally getting hit in the process. The creature pushed Jen into the sand and she stabbed its arm to free herself. He then grabbed her leg and pulled her close to lift her face up, ready to finish her off. Jen pulled out a final piece of bone and repeatedly stabbed into the wound she had left earlier, forcing the monster to drop her. He slashed at her with his claws again, but the pain was too much and he could barely move. Jen took the opportunity to return to the beach and grab more spears. The monster soon caught up with her, but after a loud roar, it collapsed to the sand. While he was still breathing, Jen stabbed him with her spear until he died. She then took a piece of its very hard shell and used it to cut off the monster's head. With the head as proof of what had happened, Jen began to walk back to the raft as the forest burned behind her. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a comment about your favorite movie, and we will make it next. Thanks for watching.